The 2024 Player Preview Series officially concludes today as we take a look at the Pittsburgh Pirates farm system, and it appears to be loaded again. So which prospects should you have your eyes on this season for the Pittsburgh Pirates?
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of this wonderful show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And sorry if I just blew your ears out. I had to turn the volume down here on the new microphone. But we are finishing the 2024 Player Preview Series today on today's episode of Locked On Pirates, which of course is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time to get tickets to any event that you want to go to. And of course, here on the Locked On Pirates podcast, we are covering everything in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates with news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of this wonderful baseball team. And again, the Player Preview Series has been very fun. You guys have seemed to absolutely love the videos, love everything that's going on with it. We're going to have a mailbag show tomorrow, so if you want to get your questions in, please get them in to me today. They could be in the YouTube comments. I'm going to have a Twitter post about it. Get those in today. We will also be live at the beginning of the Orioles-Pirates game with a live reaction to Paul Skenes making his debut. And when you're talking about the farm system, it's who it has to start with. And the system overall ranks highly again on multiple outlets. Some outlets have yet to release their 2024 team rankings so far, but it's starting to take shape every season at this point as this system seems to get deeper and deeper. Now, obviously, every system is highlighted by the guys at the top. It's just how it always is going to work. And these names should be familiar to you that we're going to start with. And if they aren't, get familiar with them quickly because you're going to hear them a lot on this show. And as I just mentioned, it all has to start with Paul Skenes, who again was the number one selection last year and makes his spring debut this afternoon versus Baltimore. More on that in the third segment of today's show. Now, of course, Skenes didn't pitch much in 2023 after a heavy workload in his final year in that championship season for the LSU Tigers. So, I mean, it is really tough to gauge his performance last year, seeing as he only threw 6 2/3 innings. So there's not really much to look at, but his 80 grade fastball, that's going to no doubt allow him to dominate minor league teams and minor league hitters. The questions, I think, really, when you're talking about Paul Skenes and what he's going to be able to do are going to come from everything else. And he has the other pitches right now that are going to be strong pitches, the slider obviously being one of them. It's really, to me, going to come down to his control. It's going to come down to his changeup. Those both graded out at 55 and 50 last year. But if those are your only real main concerns when you're talking about a starting pitcher going into his first professional year, especially a guy who is about as highly touted as Steven Strasburg was coming out of the draft, that's fine. And that's something that I think we'll see actually a lot of today, but we'll talk about it a little bit more in the final segment of today's show in Spring News and Notes. Another player you guys should all know and has already made his mark this spring is Termarr Johnson. Termarr Johnson, the Pirates' second-ranked prospect and highest position player, obviously. I mean, you look at what he's done already this spring. He already has 2 homers this spring. He added a double yesterday. And this kid is just showcasing his potentially elite bat skills and power. And I think he already has those elite bat skills and power. It's just only going to continue to get better for the guy. And he's 19 years old, folks. He still has plenty of room for growth, plenty of it. He still has things he needs to improve on. But really the coolest thing, to keep it short, on Termarr Johnson has been getting a glimpse of his potential brilliance at the plate early this spring. It's been refreshing to see a top positional prospect come in and just have pretty much an instant impact in spring. I mean, he's the first teenager in spring training to have multiple home runs in a game since Carlos Correa. That is very good company to be in, folks, if you ask me. Now, as you keep moving, you then go to Jared Jones, who of this group, to me, is the most likely guy that you are going to see called up this year. This kid's got it. He just does. He is that good. And he's already impressed early in spring with his velocity numbers. He's throwing the ball well. And I think that you're going to see him in Pittsburgh in May or June. I really do. I really think that's something that you're going to see, and get used to hearing his name on this show, because I'm going to be looking at pretty much every Jared Jones start and breaking it down on this show. And it's going to be something that's going to be very fun. He also, much like Johnson, appeared in yesterday's game. He sat around 97 and 99 regularly while striking out 2 and walking 2 in 1.2 innings. So that's very nice to see from him. And he'll no doubt get plenty of work in Indianapolis before he arrives in Pittsburgh. I don't think it's going to take that long for it to happen. I know a lot of people want him to be on the big league club right away. It's just not something I think the Pirates are going to do. Obviously, that service time manipulation is something that comes into play there, but I also think they just want to see what he did in 2023 roll over to 2024 before they bring him up to the biggest level, which I think is perfectly fine. I don't think there's any real issue with that at all. And then you have, of course, Anthony Solometo and Bubba Chandler, who headlined the remaining top 100 prospects for Pittsburgh. We talked about this a couple weeks ago when that rankings list came out. And both are highly unlikely to debut this year. I don't think either of them do. But that also doesn't mean that their growth won't be important as the season goes on. And you look at a guy like Anthony Solometo, who I absolutely love because I think he's going to potentially fix the long-standing issue of not having a consistent lefty in the lineup. But you look at what he did last year, and he took a considerable jump, first of all, in innings last year. He increased from 47.2 to 110.1, and he only continued to impress even with that drastic innings jump. He had 118 strikeouts with 39 walks, a 1.19 whip, and a 3.26 ERA last year. So you take all that and you head into this year and you hope that he continues to grow off of that. And now, obviously, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for Solometo, seeing as he did make it to Double-A last year, but he wasn't there for a long-standing period of time. This year, I think you're going to get a heavy dose of Anthony Solometo in Double-A, and that's when I really think the evaluation process can start for him. And obviously, it can start whenever you want it to when you're looking at prospects, but obviously, as you go higher into the system and start facing more talent, even potentially former MLB talent, then I think that's going to be something that you look for Anthony Solometo, and he'll get to AAA this year. I can confidently say that Anthony Solometo will be in Indianapolis at some point. I just think it'll be likely closer to the end of the year. And his big thing, continue to fill the zone and elicit swing and misses. That's the biggest thing for Solometo to keep doing. Bubba Chandler, meanwhile, I mean, you're looking at a guy that was going to be a two-way player there for a minute, and then the team said, no, we want you to pitch. And he said, okay, that's fine. He went to full-time pitching last year. He hit and pitched in 2022, obviously. So that's something that you were kind of interested in seeing. And he impressed last year in his first full-time pitching season. He only made one start in Altoona, which was interesting. But it was a 5-inning shutout from the young right-hander. He had a 4.75 ERA last year over 106 innings. Stats don't really matter all that much for a guy like Bubba Chandler. They don't really matter all that much in general. It's just some of them are actually nice to see. But they don't show his adjustments and improvements that he made down the stretch of the year. I mean, you're looking at a guy that allowed 5 runs or less over his last 10 starts while also producing 4 or more strikeouts in each of those starts. So yeah, Bubba Chandler ended the season very well, and he won't debut this season, which is fine, but monitoring his progression will also be very important as we move forward through the year. And he's a guy that I also think probably will start in Double-A. There is a world where he starts in Greensboro, which is fine, but you should expect most of his work this year to come from Double-A Altoona, with a potential cameo start in Indianapolis if needed. And we've heard about these 5 guys before, and we're going to continue to hear about these 5 guys as the season draws on and as I get more looks on these guys. But who are some prospects you all should have an eye on heading into 2024 that you might not exactly be looking at? We're going to talk about that here in just a moment. But before we do that, folks, we are going to talk about Game Time. Folks, Game Time is the place for all of your tickets to all of your favorite events that you want to go to this year, because you shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. You can find exclusive flash deals and sponsor deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off, and download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Folks, also, don't forget that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app and, of course, YouTube. And folks, also, welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every day. And again, we're capping off the 2024 player preview series here on February 29th. Happy leap year. Again, be on the lookout for the live show about an hour after this releases, probably about 45 minutes after you listen to the entire show, where we'll have instant reactions to Paul Skenes and the Pittsburgh Pirates facing the Baltimore Orioles today. More on that in the third segment. But we're going to look at some sleeper prospects today. And every good farm system has its sleepers. The guys you don't expect to take a massive leap, but they end up doing it anyway. For the Pittsburgh Pirates, recent history, take Luis Ortiz, for instance. Came onto the scene in 2022 as a relatively unknown pitcher to a lot of people, and he got ample opportunity in 2023. Now, Luis Ortiz is a guy that we're hoping can bounce back to that 2022 form. But before that, we didn't really know who he was. We didn't know what kind of player he was going to be. Now we kind of do. Now, does this system, as currently constructed, have a Luis Ortiz in it? It's hard to project that idea. It's probably a lot of luck involved in that idea. But as you look through the system, you can find some intriguing guys, not even just the guys I'm going to mention today. Some who could even make an impact on the big league roster this year, some that won't, but some that could take a considerable leap through the system and really make an impact. And the first I want to start with is Jackson Wolf. Now, Jackson Wolf is a guy that was ranked 10th last year via MLB prospects in the Pirate system. So he might not be much of a sleeper, but his name hasn't been involved in potential rotation talks much this offseason, which I found very, very interesting. Now, he has seen MLB action before with the San Diego Padres. Obviously, that's where the Pirates got him from, was San Diego, of course. But he was quite productive last year with Altoona. I mean, in 36 innings with the curve, he posted a 4.25 ERA with 30 strikeouts and 10 walks and a 1.17 whip. Not all that bad, especially for switching organizations in the middle of the year. And he had a 4.13 ERA overall last season, struck out 135 while walking only 32 batters. So he did well keeping the ball in the zone, elicited weak contact, struck out guys at a pretty good clip. And it's very nice to see that he's able to strike out guys despite usually sitting 88 to 92, typical like soft tossing left-handed pitcher. But when you look at how Jackson Wolf pitches, he has that low arm slot, that sinking action on his heater, that does contribute to a quite annoying offering for opposing hitters. If you just want to go look up his pitch or his windup, yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Just go look at it and just look at all the mechanics that he uses. Yeah, it's annoying for opposing hitters, not annoying for us. And if he can establish his changeup as a good secondary pitch along with his slider and curveball, I mean, folks, you're looking at a solid back end rotation piece and one that I'm keeping an eye on as the season moves on, because it really also depends on what happens ahead of him with Priest or Ortiz and Contreras. Because if those guys don't exactly work out and Jared Jones comes up, you can see Jackson Wolf not too far behind a guy like Jared Jones, maybe even before. But we'll keep an eye on that. Chang has to come next. Sung Shea Chang, the Chinese Taipei product, who has been fun to watch since arriving in Pittsburgh. He impressed a good bit last year, had a okay time in Altoona, hitting .251 with 4 homers and 25 RBIs, although his OPS of 656 could have been better. But you also look at his career OPS of 820, and that offers a lot of optimism for Chang. And we've seen a bit of him in spring. He homered yesterday. We'll talk about that again in the third segment. And he's shown a bit of what he has to offer. Now, although he's more known for his contact ability, he has developed some power in recent years. He increased his home run total from 6 to 13 from 2022 to 2023. Very fun to see. And I don't think he debuts this year, but if he can continue to hit well against better pitching as he rises through the system, which is always the biggest talking point in the system, especially when guys are in Greensboro, because they're always going to hit better in Greensboro. I mean, you're looking at a guy who could be a potential utility option with his above average speed and potential above average bat. Pirates already have a couple of those guys, right? Why not add another one? And you guys also know the next guy I'm going to talk about here, Shaylen Polanco, one of my favorite prospects in this system, and he will continue to be just because Shaylen Polanco is awesome. And man, he had a pretty fun 2023. Not going to lie. He arrived in Bradenton for the first time last year. Did not disappoint. 20 years old, by the way, still. It feels like he's been here forever because he really has. He signed in 2021. But he hit 12 home runs with 45 RBIs and a 762 OPS last year in his first year in Bradenton. All of those minor league career highs for him thus far. And one thing a lot of people forget about Shaylen Polanco, don't forget his $2.35 million price tag, one of the largest ever given to an international free agent by Pittsburgh. There's good reason for that. I mean, you look at his bat speed, his loose hands, and his stance. Those things have given him the ability to hit the ball often and hit it hard. And Shaylen Polanco, again, he's only 20 years old. He's still going to be a ways away from debuting for a minute. But he's already played all 3 outfield positions. He currently sits at a 50 grade on his fielding and arm, but his 55 running and above average speed, I think that'll help him find a place defensively no matter where it is in the outfield. And again, he's a guy that won't debut this year, but ever since the Pirates acquired him, I got excited. I just had to. And I remain excited for what's to come from Shaylen Polanco. And I really hope that down the line, this is way down the line, but I hope both of these guys work out. Having an outfield of guys named Shaylen Polanco and Tony Blanco Jr. just sounds so awesome. And we'll end on these prospects that I want you guys to take a look at. And we'll end on Braxton Ashcraft, who, if you remember Tuesday, Gary and I both loathe over this guy. And there's a lot that this kid has had to deal with since becoming a professional baseball player. You had the COVID year, which he missed. You had Tommy John, which forced him to miss all of 2022, and among the other things that minor leaguers deal with. Now he's healthy. And since becoming healthy, he's shown his stuff off pretty well. 52 2/3 innings last year. He posted a 2.39 ERA with 63 strikeouts and 11 walks. You guys know I love strikeout to walk rate. I always am going to love it. And that's impressive for his first work in over 2 years at the time. And you're looking at a guy now in Ashcraft who is also on the 40-man now. So if he continues to showcase his stuff, Pirates have no choice but to notice. And him being on the 40-man, folks, is no joke. This kid has some stuff. A 97-mile-per-hour fastball along with his upper 80 slider, has a pretty solid curveball that sits in the low 80s. That stuff should give him a good arsenal to work with going into this year. And for a guy like Ashcraft, much like Jared Jones, pretty confident to say you'll see him at the big league level at some point this year. I think he breaks through to the big league squad with, of course, adequate performance, hopefully to back it up. And that's something you can expect. I hope that those were some names that you guys know those names, but I hope you got, I informed you a little bit more. Keep an eye on those guys, though. I think all those guys are primed for pretty big years. And now we head to spring news and notes right after we talk about FanDuel. Folks, you know I love FanDuel because new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet at FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins, and you can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot today, because FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NBA and an official sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. And folks, again, don't forget to check out the 24/7 streaming channel Locked On Sports Today on Amazon Fire TV and YouTube. Alrighty, folks, spring training continues to just roll on down. It started and now it's just rolling. It's the final day of February. We got a spring training game today that we're going to talk about at length, but let's talk about yesterday. Pirates dropped their spring game to the Tigers yesterday, 5-3. They didn't score after the third inning, but there's still plenty to highlight from yesterday's game. Pitching was really where I wanted to start with spring news and notes today, because Quinn Priester looked good, folks. Obviously couldn't really see any of it, but based off of what I saw on StatCast, man, he was just efficient. Threw only 19 pitches, retired the side in both of his 2 innings. Looked good. More importantly, his velocity looked good. His slider looked untouchable, eliciting 4 whiffs on 6 sliders thrown, which that's awesome. He even factored in his curveball a bit, but very hard to tell the full arsenal when you only throw 19 pitches, albeit efficiently, but it's tough to get good sample size. Sure, we're going to probably see Priester a lot more as he's been kind of in that mix with Roansy Contreras and Luis Ortiz as potential back-end rotational options and a bounce-back candidate. So we'll see what Quinn Priester has to continue to offer. Jared Jones came in right after, and man, he lit up the radar gun yesterday, folks, sitting at an average of 97.8 miles per hour on his heater while reaching 99.6. It was a fastball slider day for Jones. He threw both pitches 26 out of 29 times yesterday, so not really much in else that you really saw outside of the arsenal. The slider looked really good as well, averaged at 88.9, topped out at 90.3. Was getting good swing and miss on that. Had 2 strikeouts and 2 walks, as I mentioned earlier. So I would like to see the control get under control. No pun intended. But moving forward through spring, and I do want to say this, I would like to see Jones throw more off speed in spring, really the changeup especially. I want to get that rolling as a consistent offering from Jones. I think it's something that's very important that the Pirates need to get done. And ultimately, when you look at Jared Jones, I already spoke about it earlier. This kid's going to debut this year, and I want him to be the most ready possible. And when the games don't count, let him throw a bunch of changeups. We know the fastball is elite. We know the slider is his best secondary pitch. Let him throw some changeups. Let him get that pitch up there and have a very good third offering. Aroldis Chapman also debuted yesterday, gave up a home run to former Pirate Bly Madris in his spring debut. Dauri Moreta would follow, surrendered 2 bombs. Neil Walker even joked that they needed to stop talking about Dauri Moreta's elite slider because he gave up 2 home runs on the slider. Now, as far as offense is concerned, Not really too much to speak about. Connor Joe and Chang both went deep in this one. They scored all the Pirates runs in the third inning. Termarr Johnson once again flashed his potential brilliance with a two-bagger, his third extra base hit in spring training. That was also his only at-bat of the day. The rest of the lineup was relatively quiet, but folks, if you go look at that lineup card, it wasn't a great lineup to begin with, but you also have those kinds of lineups early on in spring. It just is what it is. Now, when you look to today, this show should be out at noon for you all, and we get Paul Skenes versus Corbin Burnes. We also get to see a ton of young, fun talent from O'Neal Cruz, Jackson Holliday, Heston Kjerstad, and Henry Davis, even Adley Rutschman, as this game will feature 4 of the past 5 first overall selections in the MLB draft. Yet it's not broadcast on television, which quite honestly sucks, for being honest. Baseball prides itself on trying to get the younger generation into it, yet the younger generation has to listen to this game on a radio. Now, seeing what Skenes has to offer is the most important thing here. It's really what I'm looking for, especially considering he'll likely face Holliday, Rutschman, and Tyler Nevin and be done. That's the top 3 in the Orioles lineup card. So he'll get a chance to showcase himself against 2 young top talents in the game. And that's what I really am looking forward to from this, enough to go live later. You also look at O'Neal Cruz being in the lineup today. Ke'Bryan Hayes is in the lineup today. Henry Davis, Jack Sawinski, other household names like Leo Verpagero, Kanan Smith-Njigba, Edward Olivares. They're in the lineup today. So it's going to be a fun one against Baltimore. And don't forget that your host, Ethan Smith, will be at the home opener for the Pittsburgh Pirates against the Baltimore Orioles on April 5th. That'll be a fun game. That one will definitely be on TV. And as far as the rest of today and tomorrow, we will have a live show for you coming when the Orioles and Pirates kick off their game. Getting ready for that. We'll have an instant reaction to Paul Skenes' spring debut today. Tomorrow, we will have a mailbag show coming your way. So make sure you submit your questions on Twitter and on here if you want to in the comments on YouTube. And always remember to be on the lookout for all of your Locked On Pirates fix. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan. You can follow the pod at Locked On Pirates. You can also find this show on YouTube, Spotify, Odyssey, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you in a little bit over on YouTube at Locked On Pirates. But until then, folks, I will see you on the flip side.